you go 3,000 kilometers this way, you got Australia. And you know the island, the South Island is quite long and skinny. So any influence which comes from the south, it has quite a dramatic influence to that extent that we can have snow even in December. Like in the first week of December and last year, the snow line was at 400 meters for a day. And that was quite dramatic for us. But it's not the first time. The key feature for us is Pisa Range. So this mountain range is 2,000 meters high, so it's actually quite high. It doesn't look like it, and that means that the weather coming across the Tasman Sea, basically there's 3 mountain ranges before you get to the west coast or to Milford Sound, which basically filters through that we only have about 350 mils of rain in this area. If you go straight line about 80 k's to Milford, which is just across you and me, you're going up to 8,000 mils of rain. And you know the southwest corner of New Zealand is obviously quite beautiful. So that's a key feature. The other feature is actually you can't see this is the Dunstan Range behind you, and this is why Lake Dunstan itself sits in a bowl. So if you then look towards the lake, 80% of our production is around Lake Dunstan. So that's the heart or the engine of our region. Then to the west you got Gippsland, to the far east you got Alexandra, and to the north you got Wanaka. You know, so you can see the layout. So we have 4 distinctive, different, larger land areas within Central Otago, and then you got this area of Lake Dunstan, which is then subdivided to the south in Bannockburn. Then you got Cromwell, Lowburn, which goes to the terrace, as you can see. Then right in front of you, you got Pisa Flats and Pisa Terraces. Right here you're on Bendigo, but Bendigo got 4 different Großlagen. And then of course then you go further north to Queensberry, Terrace, and then Wanaka. But interesting is, if you look at from your point of view, that in actual fact, if you look at here and you got 80% of your production, you suddenly realize we're quite small. We only, as you already know, about 3.5% of the total production within New Zealand. There's about 2,000 hectares planted as we speak, and every year there's about 5% increase of plantings, either replantings or new plantings. So it's relatively quiet. Now another thing, it's very important, Jamie, for you to look what you see in front of you. So you see in front of you obviously the vineyards, then you see the cherry orchards with the white and black netting. Then you see over there in the far corner, it's dairy grazing is moving in, and then you got urban expansion. And if you look at as it is now, you realize we will run out of space very quickly. So that's another interesting part. What will happen to our region in the next 30 to 80 years? So you can imagine that there will be still a lot of dramatic changes happening. And the lake itself is about 65,000 years old, or the lake bed, I should say. And then another interesting feature, Jamie, is you see those terraces? 1, 2, 3. So they're basically all glacial deposits. So it starts from 150 years to 450 to 600,000 years old. And again, this also has an impact on us as we don't know yet how does it affect and what it means for the expression of the soil within the variety in your wine glass. So we have a long way to go to make all those links. Also, you can see is the interesting part is that if what I found most intriguing is what we might do this on when we come to the other end, because I want to talk about the texture of the landscape, if that's okay. So you maybe already know that, but I just say it again. You know, when there was the gold rush in Australia, in Victoria, then the gold rush started here, and they took from Australia the name Bendigo, Bannockburn and Worcester.
Oh, so they came from Australia. Cool.
Yeah, but originally, as you know, it comes from Scotland. It's just seeing the lake. Now, take the lake away, it's all gone. And then you see the original riverbed going all the way into Cromwell, where obviously it's where we were on the lookout point where we started off. And this works its way through all the way up to the left into Wanaka, and then you got Lake Wanaka to the left and Lake Harbour to the right.
Is there any alluvial influence then in Central Otago?
Sorry?
Is there any alluvial?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I can show you some. I mean, effectively all those so the last ice age was 12,000 years ago. Now imagine there's this water belting down between those two hills coming from Lake Wanaka and Lake Harbour. And you can see this bay. Just follow this ridge and it goes this way and comes out this way. This is called this is Loop Road. And you can imagine that the river has been belting out and carving out that particular bay, which you will see better when we get down there. And then over time it has receded. So this is why you got these various terraces. So there's 3 terraces. You think everything looks flat to you, but actually there's 3 terraces before you get to Quartz Reef Vineyard itself.
So that's going to be stuff that's been deposited by those waters then.
Yes, that's correct. And then over years you got erosion and wind, and then this is why you got more wind loss soils up in the Pisa, in the fens or in the burns, because they got deposited and then they couldn't get away. It's like it's like the same with snow, But those ones, they're obviously quite, so to speak, quite exposed to the winds, and wind is pretty relatively normal for us again because of the shape of the South Island and surrounded by a lot of water.
What's this terrace called here then?
That's called Chinaman's Terrace. It goes back to the gold rush. But what I want to point out, Jamie, just look at the landscape, right? And look at it from a textural point of view. You see those little small rolling hills just in the background, right? And they go a little bit steeper, and then suddenly they get big, but still nice and rolling and softly formed. Then you come up this way, up the Pisa Range, and you get bigger and taller and taller. Oh, and suddenly you see rocks, right? You suddenly see a really nice, big, fat mountain. So that gives you, this is part of it. And then if you look all the way through these 2 ridges, you see the southern tip of the Southern Alps. Suddenly you go from 2,000 meters to 3,000 meters. So you got the whole influence of any form and shape of landscape is in front of you. Plus, you got the lake, you got the river, you got the terraces, and the constant changing clouds. So I see our region extremely textural. You go to the, if you want to understand some idea. So this Pisa Range is in front, if you've seen before. You go up to the top end, that's Dijon. So that's because it's east, so there's the golden slopes of Burgundy are just on the other side of where we are now. So you got Dijon in the north, and you got Meursault in the south. And this is Burgundy. This is only one feature we have got. You still got the feature of Gibston, you still got the feature of on the other side of the Golden Slope. You still got then Alexandra, and then you still got the feature of Wanaka. So we got a lot of features coming together, which I'll talk a lot about textural qualities or textural characteristics, because this is actually a fact. It will take a long time for us to really understand why our wines are what they are. If it's Burgundy, it took 2,000 years, it will take us much longer, because this is only one proportion of our region. And in comparison, we are very small, with 2,000 hectares compared to 6,000 hectares. So quite compact. Also, compact is another very important word. So this is, I find it very, very intriguing, that kind of. The form of the landscape is beautifully rolling changes. So this is the vineyard, this Tim, the vineyard down there, and obviously Dominic just in front of us. Now we're coming now to one of the key features of our region, as to understand why we are what we are. So you see this little forest in front of you, yeah? And you can see there's native and non-native trees in there. They were planted about 30 years ago. And the only thing they had, no water, the only thing they had is a rabbit fence. Right?
So that makes all the difference, rabbit fence.
So without water and without rabbits, now you see a baby forest. And now imagine all this country around you, there will be a forest.
Without rabbits.
That's what they achieved. Because you don't really, it's so hard to understand what they have achieved as rabbits, because at the moment if something grows, it's taken. You don't even know that it's taken because it wasn't there in the first place. That's also constellation.
When's the date from?
I would say it's a bit older than you and me together. You see this? Oh.
Oh yeah. Any idea what it is?
No. I think it's access to water. It turned from this land into this. To be the first vineyard planted in Bendigo.
When did you plant?
98.
98.
So I spent a lot of time, with obviously looking at the soil types. Because I looked at some other land as well, so sometimes you have to be careful because you got salinity in about 10 meters. Because the roots won't like that. So the soil was okay. Then I had to get all the weather data, collection of weather data, which was difficult, but I got hold of the weather data when they did the study on the Clyde Dam. So it was number 2. Number 3, it took us a while to find water. And then was the question, what to plant, which clones, which rootstock. Then a big question was for me to translate my experience from Europe and from California and Oregon to the conditions here. So we got a plant density between 5 and 8,000 vines per hectare, and which I think, in all fairness, it works. It does work. What I have learned meantime from the land, that is far more complicated. Hold on. That is a much better site than I expected, but it's also a far more difficult site to understand. And if you look at the soil here, this is gives you some idea what you started off with. And then when I talk about soil fitness, you quickly understand what I mean with that.
So that's the sort of soil profile you've got here. So it's quite deep.
Yes, that was also the main reason, digging down to 6-7 meters and see if there's any activity down there from a plant point of view. And the answer was yes. So that was good. There's also 3 different soil types within the vineyard, and I still need to work on that one. But then also you also can see now, coming back to the original talk we had about the river belting down, and now you can see it, coming down along the edge, coming around here, and then quietly dragging down again back where the river is now. And you see the vineyard is on the terrace, then you go down to another terrace, come all the way along here, and then where the gap is from the vineyard, you go back to the next terrace, and there's another terrace before you get to the river. Very intriguing, because it looks like flat land, but actual fact it's not.
How big is this vineyard?
That's also 2 times 15 hectares. Okay. So Quartz Reef only comes from this, and the bubbles come from over there.
Yeah.
And the vintage sparkling wine you will have sooner or later comes from this block, where we drove up to Chardonnay block. If you look at the trunk, you would say, okay, that's 12 at the most.
And how old are
but
these
not
guys?
21.
21, right.
Is there loop rod shelter built on? Yes. Yeah.
So what was your journey then with organics? So you said you started off with organics at Ripon.
Yes. So it's a very interesting story because it's intriguing. So I always was interested from a biodynamic point of view, mainly because from an anthroposophical point of view, back home in Austria. And then I visited many wineries in Germany regarding biodynamic wines in around 1980, and you couldn't drink them. So obviously, coming from a winemaking school, anything that smells like vinegar is really bad. Anyway, they were undrinkable. And then coming to New Zealand. And the first thing I did when I arrived at Ripon Vineyard to sell the herbicides. Rolf didn't like that. But anyway, we made it happen. And the first thing when I started Quartz Reef was I bought herbicides. So that tells you two things. One, it's very easy to spend someone else's money. And number two, I was so, should I say, I was so overwhelmed about the site with, the 3 W's, and I had them all: lack of water, lots of wind, and heaps of weeds. So I had to go for big action. And then the problem was for me to go into mechanical weeding wasn't possible because there were too many rocks in there. And then finally, being pregnant for it for 9 years, then in 2007, Sam, Grant, and we made the call. That's it. And from one day to another, we converted a whole lot. I mean, never looked back. But the key is you must have. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. But it's a matter of confidence. And I was scared that I'll fail. And with Sam and Grant on board, I knew that I had some backup. So that's really the key factors. Did you believe you can make it?
What are the challenges in Central?
Well, I think the challenge was, number one, there was no experience, right? And as you know, if you spend all your life, being influenced by protecting your vines, and if they're crook or they're, with all sorts of diseases you can have, and from a fertilizer point of view, like soil nutrients. So it was unknown territory. It's not unknown territory now for the new ones because they can see the other ones can do it. So it's not really an issue anymore. But at the time, it was the great support of James Milton, understandably. And then we as a region worked well together with Gareth, Shane from North Burnwell, now Burn Cottage, and then Nick Mills, and then us, really. And if you break ourselves down, Nick has a very great way of have a spiritual attitude to his approach of biodynamics, the way he looks at things. You have Burn Cottage, which is the most holistic way of doing it because they started off like that. And then you got Gareth and I. We are more, we are practitioners. So we are quite, we can sense everything, but we have maybe the most down to earth approach when we talk about those things, without getting over the top for people. So that's, I think, that's where we sit. And then of course now we got 24% of our region either converted or certified in organics or biodynamics. New Zealand average is 6%. So you can see that our region is going quite strong, again, because of the ability to work together.
And is your main focus on the soil health?
I would say so. Yeah. It is soil health. And then with soil health, there's a good chance you also achieve plant health.
Yeah. And is part of the goal to get some more organic material into the soils?
Yes, and also understand you still have to be a very good grape grower, otherwise it will not work. I mean, I still can have 10 tons of peanut, but it doesn't make a great peanut. So it all has to link in, and then of course it obviously spills over in the winery as well. Where you then have far more confidence, with wild ferments, and now the yeast populations are strong enough, whichever corn it comes from, because obviously the yeast also gives a direct influence where the grapes come from, because the yeast, they're very tribal. I'm sure you're aware of that. And so this is why some ferments are different than others, even if it's from the same vineyard, the same variety, irrelevant of rootstock and clone. So that's also very interesting that you got something else I haven't really fully understood, but I know there's an interesting study, as you know, which is done by Michael Brekovich, just different tribes of yeast in different parts of the vineyard. So this is very good.
And then what do you do to increase the soil?
Firstly, you got you obviously you avoid any chemical input, so that's a good start. Secondly, you got your compost, you got your mulch, you got companion plants, and then with that, from a biodynamic point of view, is also I see the preparation 500 and 501 mainly as stimulus. It's more a stimulus. That's I think this is the function. Also the function from the preparations, like the basically homeopathic preparations for the soil. That also makes sense. Again, that's more like stimulating, energizing. That is, I think, it's the key. What comes in from a biodynamic point of view. And so that consistently, you're looking at new, try to learn new ways, understand things better, and every year do something better than the other, and then do something worse than you thought you will. So it's kind of consistently.
So when you made the switch, did you notice a difference in the vineyard, and did you notice a difference in the wines?
Oh, I'm a bit cautious because you got these factors of the vineyard is getting older. You also got more experience, a better understanding. And of course, you're pulling away completely from any chemical input. I think it's the combination, if you ask me. But we can talk about it when we look at 2 wines at the winery. If there might be something might happen. But also an interesting part is also technology. You still have to remember technology. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a good thing in actual fact. And I believe that we just bought a new Testema. The first harvest was 2015. I think that also has a big influence.
Which sort is it?
It's a Pelenk.
So with the fingers? Yeah.
So that's it. But yes. I mean, you still have to get the basics right, and then you have to learn how to work with it, because obviously each vintage is completely different. We fill them up again in March.
Do you bury them or keep them in the barrels?
No, we bury them. And then here you got your. I've got these 2 preps where we have all the various, and I want to show you the latest Sauvignon Blanc clone, if you're interested in that. Very nice Sauvignon Blanc, new flavor profile. Very, very international.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Valerian. So if you can't sleep on the plane, just take a bottle with you. That works well. So as again, it smells quite nice and rich. Different smell than the 500. The main reason is I do very much believe it's the intent what counts, and the energy what you put in what counts, instead of doing mechanically.